In a world of endless temporary restraining orders, national injunctions, and corrupt political activist judges who stop at nothing to thwart President Trump's agenda, the Senate, it seems, is finally getting off their duffs and taking a look at action to stop this threat to democracy the courts are engaged within. This is an article from the Post-Millennial discussing this story. It's titled, Senator Mike Lee and Josh Hawley propose legislation to prevent judicial abuse and overreach. Senator Mike Lee of Utah, as well as Josh Hawley, have put forward legislation that could curb or would curb the powers of federal district court judges to enact judicial orders against the executive branch. Lee's bill, called the Restraining Judicial Activist Act of 2025, first reported on at the Washington Examiner, seeks to check the powers of district court judges that have ruled against decisions made by the executive branch. The act would create a three-judge court to oversee rulings opposed to actions from the executive branch, such as executive orders. Lee said of the bill that America's government cannot function if the legitimate orders of our commander-in-chief can be overridden at the whim of a single district court judge. We have seen them presume to run the military, the civil service, foreign aid, and human resource departments across the executive branch, blatantly unconstitutional overreach. My legislation will create a judicial panels to expedite Supreme Court review of these blanket injunctions, preventing unelected radicals in robes from sabotaging the separation of powers. Now, the judges on the panel checking orders made against the executive branch would be chosen by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. And the bill states that no temporary restraining order, stay, preliminary injunction, or other equitable relief may be granted against the executive branch's decisions unless there is a majority of the three judges on the panel that agree with the action taken by the lower federal judge. Meanwhile, Hawley's bill, named the National Injunction 5 Abuse Prevention Act of 2025, seeks to end liberal judges' serial abuse of power by banning nationwide injunctions from federal district courts. Which about damn time, if you ask me. He said of his bill that unelected district judges are usurping the authority of a duly elected president and dictating national policy for 330 million Americans. Congress must stop this unconstitutional weaponization of the judiciary. My bill would be a critical step doing just that. And really, this is all long overdue. Corrupt, rogue judges are undermining the United States of America at every turn. They are putting the Constitution in peril by this continuous overreach. They are daring the Trump administration to throw up their hands in frustration and just start ignoring them, which would create a constitutional crisis, which I think is the purpose of all these insane TROs and national injunctions that we're seeing. In fact, in just the last 7 days alone, we have had multiple injunctions against the administration. There's the crazed Judge Boasberg that we've talked about here on this channel, who stopped the Alien Enemies Act enforcement. There was another judge blocking the president's shutdown of U.S.-funded broadcasts like Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, which Trump had targeted as propaganda via an executive order. The judge in that case is trying to force the administration to continue funding despite Trump's order to dismantle the outlets. Then we had another judge, this is Lauren Ali Khan, who issued a TRO blocking an executive order-driven attempt to freeze federal health care grants, which is part of a broader funding pause tied to Trump's agenda, meaning he wants to review the DEI or woke programs and expunge them. And last, if not the most outrageous of them all, just this morning, hot off the press, came this little snippet from the conservative news outlet Breitbart. They write, West Coast judge says Trump administration must take in refugees and pay for their housing. What? Let's see. This is by Neil Munro. He writes, a trio of federal judges in California declared on Tuesday that President Donald Trump must welcome roughly 40,000 refugees approved by President Joe Biden's deputies. One of the judges, Melissa Keeney, the progressive lawyer for the elite-funded Anti-Borders International Refugee Assistance Project. My God, this should tell you everything you want to know about this. But whatever, she says, we welcome this continued relief for tens of thousands of refugees who will now have the opportunity to restart their lives in the United States and destroy America. I added that last part. In a second courtroom in Seattle, another federal judge ordered the Trump administration to keep paying the quasi-government agencies that settle the refugees in Americans' crowded housing, schools, and workplaces, such as in Springfield, Ohio. The judge's policy preferences are likely to be appealed by Trump's deputies. Obviously, the decisions contradict his legal claim that presidents have full authority over who gets to cross the U.S. borders, which they do. The judge's views also contradict Trump's election mandate to reduce the civic burden of migration. They don't care about that. But the progressives' lawsuits are good news for the allies among the nation's meatpacking companies. Many of these companies rely on the progressives to supply them with cheap, subsidized, and healthy workers and semi-slaves to replace prior refugees worn by tough working conditions in the plants where chains on the disassembly lines often deliver 300 carcasses per hour. And they worry that without these progressive-delivered refugees, the companies would be forced to buy more high-tech robots and hire better-paid Americans to operate said robots. Do they not hear themselves? These a-holes are literally advocating for semi-slave labor. They want non-citizens to do all the work. It's good news because these lesser-than people get to do all the hard jobs that our good, sweet little innocent angel Americans just can't do. I mean, what are we talking about here? Why is it that modern leftists just can't seem to let go of their slave history, their slave past? There always seems to be a push to have lower class citizens, these less thans. You've got the pre-Civil War era of the Democrat Party with actual slavery. Then post-Civil War, they had the KKK to put those black people back in line. Then there was the Jim Crow laws separating blacks from whites. Again, Democrat Party. And now there's a push for these new semi-slaves to do all the work that real Americans just don't know how to do or can't do because we're good little American boys and girls, and it's just so hard, so tough. We need slaves to do it. Can they not hear themselves and see exactly how they sound? I guess not. Anyway, the Breitbart article goes on to say Biden's deputies imported 197,000 refugees by October of 2024 and hope to import more than 125,000 more during the next year with a fast-track process at a cost of more than $2.5 billion. What? There may be many refugees approved by Biden, but still outside the country. As of September, more than 40,400 had been approved for U.S. refugee status. This according to the Migration Policy Institute. But Trump suspended the refugee programs on January 20th. But the 3 California judges don't like that. And though they acknowledge that Trump has the authority to decide how many refugees to accept during his term, they also argue that Trump's executive order did not actually stop the inflow of the migrants approved by Biden's deputies. The Seattle judge declared that Trump did not properly explain his cutoff funding to the refugee agencies that deliver the refugees into the empty slots beside that chains that pull animal carcasses through the slaughterhouses. He doesn't have to explain anything. This judge is an idiot. We have rogue judges trying to order the executive branch to bring in 40,000 refugees, non-citizens, to the country and to pay for them. These judges are trying to force the administration to bring these people in. It is the very definition of judicial abuse. These people are unelected, yet they think that they can override an elected president's executive order impacting American citizens nationwide with this giant national security issue. The executive branch under Article 2 of the Constitution has broad authority over immigration and border security, and these pissant little judges do not have any authority here, and yet they rule against the administration like they are little kings. The president is the steward of national defense and foreign affairs. These little judges have no business ruling on this, and yet here we are. My friends, the executive branch's authority over the country and who gets in is critical. And with corruption from judges like these 3 here are intent on harming the United States. They're doing it because Orange Man bad and also because they want as many non-citizens coming into this country as possible because eventually you get them amnesty and you get free votes. They know what they're doing here, but they don't care how many Americans are hurt in the process. This is why the bills that are upcoming from Senator Lee and Senator Hawley with their Restraining Judicial Activists Act and Nationwide Injunction Abuse Prevention Act seems to me like a critical, necessary thing to stop this exact kind of scenario from happening, especially when you have a Supreme Court that seems content to just let these harmful judges' actions stay while it works its way up the courts. By the Supreme Court not doing something about these judges, they are allowing these rogue individuals to thwart the will of American people at every turn. Now, with the Senate Judiciary hearing next week and the House vote looming, this refugee ruling could put a fire under Congress's rear ends, especially for the Republicans. And let's hope that it does, because it seems that with all these rogue judges roaming around and taking their actions against the American people, the safety and security of the U.S. citizens are at stake, and something needs to be done now.